This is Brian with King Grizzly. A viewer took us up on our challenge to send in questions and asked how to make a box like this, where you hover over an image or a container and you get some text. Maybe it's linkable. How's the background color? How do we do that in Elementor? Great challenge. Let's see how to do it. And if you have questions, send them in. So first thing I like to do is inspect something. So I'm going to inspect this, right click, hit inspect. I want to just look over the code for this particular website. Like, how do they do it, right? So I notice they have a link, an A tag here. There's an image, and then there's like a wrapper div. There's actually two layers that they've got wrapping around these things. And what I notice is that this link is actually the height of the whole box, even though the text doesn't really take up the whole thing. And if you want to see the hover state, I'm going to select that link, go over here to HOV and turn on the hover state, and then we can actually see the hover state. So I'm just kind of investigating. I can see that the green color appears here, but it's sort of interesting that this link, if I look at it, is set to be 100% high. If I turn that off, you can see it doesn't cover it. So then in my mind, I'm going into Elementor, and I'm starting to think, oh, how do I build the same thing? I have to add a container of some sort. I might choose grid in this case, and then I maybe I'm gonna start thinking about, well, should I add in a container, right? And then I name it wrapper, and I start trying to kind of copy what that site was doing, and then I'm thinking about CSS and JavaScript to write, and then I realize there's a widget where I could totally do this. That's the nice thing about Elementor, but sometimes it doesn't occur right away. So check this out. I'm going to go to my widgets. I'm going to look for the call to action widget. If you don't see yours, you may need to go to the dashboard under Elementor Element Manager and turn it on. But I'm going to drop it on here, and you'll notice it's not really what we're looking for yet. But let's make it into that. So first of all, we want the skin to be cover. And then we're going to go to content. And I don't need a description. I'm going to delete that. I don't need a button. I'm going to delete that. I just need my heading. It's already there. If I'm SEO aware, maybe I want this to be a certain tag. I can set that. So I'm going to choose H3. And then if I want a link, I can have a link. I don't have to, but I could do something like, we'll just say google.com as a test, right? Or DuckDuckGo if you value your privacy, apparently. And then we go, hey, apply the link on the whole box. Cool. We're already getting closer, right? I can have a ribbon if I want a ribbon. I don't want one, but that's kind of cool. Then we go to style, start working on this. How tall do I want this thing to be? There's different ways you could choose to make your height, but let's just go ahead and I'll just choose some value, 360 pixels, but you have other options here for how you want to do that. And I want my text aligned to the middle, but I could do the top or the bottom, or I could right align or justify, left justify. I'm going to go center, and I can even set the padding on this box to whatever I want. Then here's what we want to do. Well, let's go to hover effects first. Right now it's kind of zooming in, darkening. I don't really want that. So I'm going to turn off grow, set that hover animation to none. Same with the background. I don't want to zoom or anything. Just want that solid color. So by default, the overlay color is going to be, I'm going to say transparent. The way you can get that is just like set a color like white and then slide down the opacity. And so it's see-through, and then on the hover state, I'm going to pick some color I like. Let's try like here's a bluish color, nice blue color. So you can see that's working, but it's kind of a slow transition. I'm going to speed that up. Or I could just say, I don't want that. Just make it instant, right? Depends on what you're up to. But let's maybe could go kind of like in here. You can even play around with CSS filters. I'm not going to do that, but you could if you wanted to. What about this text, right? How are we going to make that disappear initially, right? There's no text here. So how do we make that disappear? Click on the content. Look at this typography. We can style our font however we want, but there's color options. So I can just set a transparent color here. What I recommend, instead of doing this over and over, is setting a global one so I can actually just choose that quickly. I would do that under my site settings. And then on hover, I'll just give it whatever color I want. I thought white probably worked okay. Check it out. We've already achieved the effect that we're after, right? So I can just upload whatever image I want to upload. And then I think we're good to go. So I'm going to duplicate this a few times just to see what happens if I want to make sure this thing actually works. So let's make the heading really like too long and see, are they all going to grow or what's going to happen? I don't really know what's going to happen. Whoa, I opened up my spotlight search there. I got to make it a little taller. I just want to make sure that they're all going to maybe stretch or something. So you can see, oops, if they don't have the sort of like, if one of them has more text than the others, then maybe they're not going to behave quite how I want. Depends on what you're after. We could look at some different options here. So like I'm going to click on this. I can experiment. Does grow help? Nope, that doesn't help. Let me look at the style again. Well, I set it to 360, but what if I just move this? Oh, that doesn't work. So I could look into something like clicking the pencil and setting it to 100%. That doesn't work. 100 vertical height, that's too tall. So as you can see, I'm a little bit stymied here, not exactly knowing how do I get this thing to be 100% height. There may be a more clever solution for doing this. I'm not certain. And most likely you can just set a fixed height because your headings won't be incredibly long. But if you have to, sometimes in Elementor, you have to resort to CSS. So I may come here. I'm just going to type, I clicked the advanced tab. I went to custom CSS. I'm going to type selector. And I'm going to go ahead and make that height of this image, actually of the link, a height 100%. And then we get to be full height. Now I would have to do that to the ones that didn't have the tallest text. There's probably a tidier way to do this. I just wanted to show you the thought process because you should test out edge cases. Now, I'm probably not going to have a heading that's this long, and I could be totally fine with just not putting a crazy long heading like that and setting a fixed height to whatever I want. I think I had picked 360, and then I could go down to, say, tablet. And if I don't want it to be 360, maybe on tablet I want it to be 300. And I could copy and paste this style onto the other ones to get a matching height. And with our grid, we can also decide how many columns and rows we want. We can play around with that. Flexbox will have some different options that are available, but this may be one of the quickest ways to get to something much like this design. But again, there's many ways to solve, but hopefully this gives the viewer at least one possible solution. And if you're not using grid, if you're using a flexbox container, just real quickly, I'll drop one on here. Flexbox, I'll probably have them flow to the right. I'm going to paste this item. I'm going to duplicate it. I can click on my container and set it to wrap if I want, or not wrap, so I could get them to all fit on one line. So if I have 4, if I have 5, they're always going to fit. But if I want them to wrap, then what I would need to do is turn on wrap here for the container, and I would have to experiment with the width of these items. So I could choose a width in pixels, or probably more likely a percentage width. Like if we want 4 up, I might do, you'd think 25 would work, but it won't because there's all the gaps in between. I'll probably do 20%, and then I'll set it, I might experiment with setting it to grow. So copy, paste style, paste style, paste style. So then what happens is they fill this space without overflowing. But then you can see some of the challenges of Flexbox. Then you have to decide, oh, well, what do I do to this one? Because if I set it to grow, it does that, right? So there's going to be trade-offs between grid and Flexbox. That's why I think grid might work better for this example, since it really is a grid. And if you are using the grid, if I throw another grid on here, you can control those gaps nicely, right? So I can really start increasing those gaps because there was quite a bit of space in between these. Yeah, so anyway, let me know what you think about this kind of a video. We'd be happy to make more if this sort of showing the thought process and our struggles helps. But yeah, thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing.